Hey horror fans, welcome to another episode of Room 237 Presents Reslashed, the show where I take a classic horror film and its modern day remake and I compare them and ultimately see which one's better and if a remake was even warranted. This one's probably going to be another landslide because this time I'm doing the 1986 versus 2007 version of The Hitcher. Now, right off the bat, The Hitcher is a movie that I'm a big fan of. It's, more than a horror film. It's a psychological thriller, very well done, well acted. Sadly, it often goes overlooked and underrated. Not a lot of people talk about it. There has yet to even be a Blu-ray release of this. There's one overseas, I think from Germany, that I heard looks beautiful. Rainbow Rat for Life just did a video about it. And, Newsweek says an odyssey of horror and suspense. And it really is. I just reviewed this last night. The video is up, on my channel. Because the actor who played the Hitcher, Rutger Hauer, passed away about 9 days ago at this point. Great character actor. Mostly known for, villains. He was, an icon of the genre. And this was my favorite film of his. Just a very intimidating, crazy ass role, but, played very subtly and effectively. 2007, we got this. And unfortunately, I think, younger generations, when they think of The Hitcher, they think of Sean Bean. Sean Bean, he's in a lot of stuff. He's known for, Game of Thrones and a bunch of other things. So I'm sure that helps, get the recognition of this movie around more than this one, unfortunately. But this movie, in my opinion, is not a fucking good movie at all. I'll get into why. I've also reviewed this by itself too, so feel free to check that out. That will be under my remakes playlist. I know, I'm all stuffy again, but so right off the bat, let's get into it. Cast. Well, okay. With this, you have, obviously you have Rutger Hauer as the Hitcher. A very, Hannibal Lecter-esque type performance before Hopkins even played Hannibal Lecter. Very subtle but very effective. You really buy that he is this insane. He's insane, but he's also a mastermind. You buy that this guy could be, one step ahead of every move in the film. He, just wonderfully played. And of course, that's opposite C. Thomas Howell, who, like I said in my review for this, a lot of people talk about Matthew Broderick or Anthony Michael Hall, or, other, sort of, or even like Rob Lowe or Emilio Estevez of the 80s. I've always liked C. Thomas Howell. And this would be my favorite role of his as well. He's a guy that you really feel for. He seems like a very smart, well-to-do kid, and he just, the odds are stacked against him. You want to see him get out of it, but because of the Hitcher, he can't. Every chance he gets to, prove himself, the Hitcher pretty much fucks him over. And every time he's knocked down a peg, he plays it so well, to the point where he even puts a gun to his chin, and, you wouldn't blame him if he did, but then you see that, he can't do it. And, going from screaming to crying to, just having to laugh, because he plays it all very well. You get Jennifer Jason Leigh, who is, a sweet character. She comes in later in the film, but you know, she's cute and sweet. You get, you know, you appreciate the fact that even though she doesn't know him, she's gonna try and help him. And I've always liked Jeffrey DeMunn. He's a good character actor as well. He plays the captain. There's nobody in this. I mean, Zachary Knighton and Sophia Bush, they don't bring anything to the characters. They're one-dimensional. They're faceless. They're just CW. Like, Zachary Knighton is like a Jared Padalecki. He's like generic brand Jared Padalecki. Then, of course, Sean Bean, who I'm sure there's something out there I like him in. Maybe the first Silent Hill movie. He is not, you know, a force to be reckoned with named John Ryder like Rutger Hauer is. Fucking get at it. No. He seems bored half the time. He doesn't have... Rutger Hauer has that look on his face, like, you know, you can tell there's insanity in there, but you can see the gears turning, like he's always calculating. Sean Bean doesn't fucking have that. And just pointless. So cast obviously goes to the original. The effects, well, I mean, this one doesn't really have any blood effects, and actually, this is going to be kind of conversely, I guess. You know, this has a bunch of explosions, a bunch of actual stunt work, and you know, cars flipping over and everything, and that's well done. Practically real explosions. You know, other than the scene where like the dog, I guess, is eating a cop that's been killed, there's really no blood or gore effects. In fact, the scene where it should have it, the scene where Jennifer Jason Leigh is tied from the truck to the trailer, you know, that scene itself is so fucking full of tension that they didn't have to show it, and it was even more effective. This one just goes nuts with CGI. CGI blood, CGI gore where there is. Some of the explosions, yeah, could have been practical, but they're Michael Bay explosions, so they're kind of useless. Or, sorry, not useless, they're just not as aesthetically pleasing. Atmosphere. Okay, this is a big one because this movie relies on atmosphere. It complements it very well. This movie, like, wide shots of the desert with the mountains, or where just straight road as far as the eye can see. It helps build the isolation. Jim Halsey's alone. He's got no one in the world to help him until Jennifer Jason Leigh comes in. And just being in an area like that where, you know, if something does happen, you can scream all you want, it's just going to echo back at you. Just, I'm going to keep saying the word isolation because that's what this kind of atmosphere does, and it's very effective. This movie is in the same terrain, but fails to utilize this atmosphere. It doesn't, you know, every time they're somewhere, it always, you know, like there's, when they go from like some sort of junkyard or whatever to the police station to another station, it feels very close together. You don't have a lot of scenes of just road and silence, and just, this movie does not know how to utilize its atmosphere. And also where you have a boyfriend girlfriend traveling together, it sort of kills whatever isolated effects of the atmosphere this movie could have had, like this one did, because again, he's by himself. Alright. The villain or the killer, well, I've already touched on it some, but, you know, it's like having, just to use an analogy, it's like you have Hannibal Lecter in this, and you have just a generic, faceless, one-dimensional, trying too hard with no real effect. Like, nobody. Like, okay, a Platinum Dunes. You have a Platinum Dunes villain. Okay, that's exactly what it is. Rutger Hauer is the kind of character actor who I feel they let him run with a lot of things. When Jim Halsey spits in his face and he starts like playing with it and he has this look of glee, I feel like that was something Rutger Hauer brought to the role. Like, I don't feel like that could be scripted. And it's just subtle things like that that make him creepy, that make him intimidating and scary. Kind of guy you don't want to fuck with. He has this sort of look on his face, like when the helicopter's coming and he's in the truck out of nowhere. He just kind of has like this grin, like he knows exactly what to do, and he just kind of looks up at the helicopter and just, it's like he knows he's unstoppable, and he relishes in it. At the same time, you don't know what his motives are, which makes him even more intimidating, because if you don't know what their motives are, then you don't know what can stop them or what they will stop at. And he is, as far as, human sort of villains go, he is one of the most, believably intimidating and scary. Sean Bean is the complete opposite. He looks bored half the time. He looks like he's phoning in Rutger Hauer's lines, which is another thing. If someone's doing the same lines, I should have mentioned this in my actual review for that. Lines that from this movie, if someone else is saying them and it's already not scary, it makes it even less scary and less intimidating. So that point also goes to 1986. Alright, score. Well, even though I'm not the biggest fan of 80s sort of synth pop scores like this, or the prime example I always give is a Beverly Hills Cop. I've just never been a fan of that type of music. This music fits infinitely more than this. I don't even remember what the actual score is. Probably just another generic, crappy, mostly jumpy and erratic kind of score. But also just using songs like, I think it's called Closer. I just call it the Fuck You Like an Animal song, 9 Inch Nails. So even if it's not the score, music choices don't make sense in this. And then the other category I have is scares, which, this is pure suspense. We know Rutger Hauer is a psycho from the beginning. So even from just seeing him in the car of a family with children builds dread. The scene when Jennifer Jason Leigh is tied to the truck is nothing but tension and pure suspense. This movie doesn't have any of that. It tries desperately, but never once because you don't care about the characters. Ultimately, that's what builds suspense. You have to give a shit about the characters. And in this one, yeah, you care about C. Thomas Howell. You care about Jennifer Jason Leigh, especially since, there might be a possible romance. And it sounds cheesy, but you kind of give a shit about it. And, you feel like they feel something for each other. So that scene is even more suspenseful. This one just doesn't have any of that. Before the first act of the film is done, before any real Hitcher stuff begins, you already know that it's almost a cookie cutter copy of the original. And you don't care about the generic CW characters. So yeah, not scary at all or suspenseful. This one is a prime example of what a suspense film is, or a thriller, what a thriller is. So then ultimately, did this movie even need to be remade? I think it's obvious that this one is far superior, yet often underlooked, and this one probably comes to more people's minds nowadays, which is a fucking shame. But did this movie need to be remade? Did this deserve to be made? No. Like I said in my review for this, it might not be to the level of Gus Van Sant's Psycho, but it's pretty damn close. And if you're even close to that, and with what changes you do make, if they bring nothing, then there's no point. This movie was just a simple cash-in. They tried to make it scarier. The writing was completely let me try that again. Completely lazy, because the original writer gets a writing credit because they use so much of his shit. If that's the case, why even bother making it? Just re-release it. Or take some of that money and just make a Blu-ray. I don't know. It didn't need to be remade. This movie's perfectly fine the way it is. I know in one video Rambo Rap for Life did, he said this movie's not really dated. Like, when you're watching it, the clothes and cars, I mean, okay, the cars might look a little old, but it's not super dated. You could release this today, and it would, especially with how everything is retro and nostalgic now, the look of the film would probably be all the more beneficial. But yeah, didn't need to be remade. This movie's just fine the way it was. Fuck this movie. So that was my re-slash episode of 1986 versus 2007, The Hitcher. Thank you for watching.